Okay, so it can come as a huge shock to someone when they realize that the way they always assumed they would have a baby was not going to is not going to happen like that. And everybody thinks that you meet the I'm talking about heterosexual couples here. Of course, it's different with gay women and single women, but that you meet your partner and you get together, and in the union of love and intimacy, you create this wonderful new life, and that's how you have a baby. So then, when it becomes clear that that's not working, and you begin to find yourself in the medical world, and you're having tests and investigations and scans and things like that, that in itself is a shock. That it's not happening for us. There might be something wrong. Then as you go along and you find you've got to have some sort of intervention, medical intervention like IUI or IVF or something, that can be quite a big deal for many people, really. It's just not how they ever envisioned they would have a child. And to move into this medicalized world where all these other people are involved in the conception of your child is like, this is strange and weird. Then there may be the whole thing about all the worries about the treatment. People have concerns, well, I'm going to be injecting myself with these hormones, and what effects they're going to have on me psychologically and emotionally and physiologically, physically. And there's a lot of concern and worry, and it's a very difficult adjustment to make, to come to terms with that. And I think it's even worse if it's ICSI, like if it's a male sperm problem, because at least if the sperm is okay and there's some other reason they don't know what it is, or there's other reasons, blocked tubes or something, they can try ovulation induction, or they've Clomid and letrozole, and then ovulation induction, and then IUI, and then eventually you get to IVF. So there's this kind of like gradual lead in. You're trying different things, gradual increase in medical intervention. But with ICSI, it's like none of those things can work. You have to go straight into the whole 9 yards of a full IVF cycle. And that can be a real shock. I mean, a lot of people that I speak to have been given this diagnosis and given this outcome. This is what you've got to have done, and it's like a sudden change from trying naturally to doing something highly medical virtually overnight. And so it takes a lot to adjust to. And yeah, I talk to a lot of people about that because it is quite a difficult thing to adjust to. There's another place at which a huge shock comes, is if they're told they either need donor sperm or donor eggs. And that's a very, that's an enormous adjustment that's got to be made. If the man, is unable to impregnate his wife, get his wife pregnant, and another man's sperm has to be used, it can have a huge impact on his sense of himself. For men, masculinity, virility, and fertility are all interlinked. So if your fertility is in question, they feel their masculinity is also being questioned, and their virility. And sometimes there's issues with having sex because they feel, what's the point? I can't get my wife pregnant. And so there's all of that has to be kind of worked through and explored and resolved. If it's egg donation, well, and on both egg donation and sperm donation, there's a sense of genetic loss. I will not be able to have a baby of my own genetically. And gosh, there's an enormous wealth of implications, emotional, psychological, ethical questions, doubts, fears, concerns, and worries about that all have to be explored. And you know, for some people, it can come quite early on in their fertility journey. When they're quite young, women can be diagnosed with premature ovarian insufficiency, POI, at quite an early age, and it's like absolute. You will have to have egg donation if you want to have a baby, and that's a huge shock to the system, to the emotional system. And equally for men, if they suffer with something like Klinefelter's and they will not be able to have a baby genetically, they have to adjust to what that means to them. So these are the alternative routes. Also, finally, if none of these things work, then they have to relinquish the idea of ever having a genetic baby or even a baby of their own, and move to adoption. And so a lot of the work I do are for those couples who have got to that point and they're now having to grieve the loss of ever being pregnant, giving birth, having a baby of their own, genetically or otherwise, and that they have to move into thinking about adoption. And all of these are very long processes that can take a long time and require a lot of emotional processing and a lot of grieving and adjusting to.